Hi, I'm Josh Apter, founder of Manhattan Edit Workshop. I want to welcome you to Sight, Sound, and Story, episode 31, which is actually really hard to believe that we've done 31 of these, but it's kind of exciting. We're doing a special event tonight called Unveiling Production Design for Film and TV. I have noticed that the production design is the credit almost closest to right after at the end credits. It's like right there with the editor. And I used to wonder about that. But when you look at something, I'll call out specifically Lessons in Chemistry because I just watched that for another event. But the importance of what that job is for the look and feel of a show, period piece or otherwise. It's an amazing job, and you're going to hear all about that tonight. And so I'm really happy to bring you in here and introduce this event. We're going to be joined by production designers Gavin Bocquet, Nelson Coates, Seth Reed, Kat Smith, and our moderator tonight's Will Mavity. I'll let them introduce themselves so I can get off camera and they can get on camera as soon as possible. I'd like to thank our sponsors, as always, AJA, American Cinema Editors, Avid, and Filmmaker U. You guys make the world go round for us, and we couldn't do this without your support. And of course, Jason Banke and Janet Dalton, who do all the heavy lifting around here. All I have to do is show up and riff on film for half a minute and get you guys acclimated and ready to watch a great event, which is what's going to happen tonight. So sit back and enjoy Sight, Sound, and Story, episode 31, Production Design and Film and TV. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh Apter, and a big thank you to Sight, Sound, and Story for hosting this event. I'm here with four wonderful guests, each of whom is nominated for an award from the Art Directors Guild this year for their work in a variety of pretty amazing shows. So first up, I have the president of the Art Directors Guild, I believe, Nelson Coates, who is nominated this year for his work in season 3 of The Morning Show, episodes 1, 2, and 5. He is a 5-time ADG nominee, and he's a previous winner for Crazy Rich Asians. Nelson, thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Up next, we have Kat Smith, who is nominated for production design, a TV movie or limited series for Lessons in Chemistry. She is a previous nominee for Transparent, True Blood, and American Beauty. Hello, Kat.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
And then we have Gavin Bocquet, who this is his first ADG nomination for Silo, episode 3, Machines. He is a previous Emmy winner for Young Indiana Jones. He also is the production designer for the Star Wars prequels, which I don't know why those weren't ADG nominees, especially Revenge of the Sith. I mean, come on. Hello, Gavin. Thank you for being here. And then we have Seth Reed. He's a 4-time ADG nominee, including for Minority Report, and he's nominated this year for season 4, episode 3 of For All Mankind, The Bear Hug. So Apple TV is really just putting out just an insane variety of shows right now with pretty amazing production design. I was kind of blown away by the scale of all these stories. We'll get into clips later, some specifics, but I kind of wanted everyone to talk about, there's a recurring theme really in all 4 of these shows, I notice, which is and the production design kind of touches on this explicitly, which is they all 4 deal with class disparity. And in some cases, literally, in Silo and For All Mankind, we literally have actual levels of that kind of demonstrate different levels of wealth and status. And in The Morning Show, obviously, we have characters moving out into new environments that often are far bigger and wealthier than anything we've seen on display in the show. And then in Lessons in Chemistry also, I mean, that's very much there with some of the class disparities in Los Angeles. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to kind of start with going back and forth, everyone talking about a little bit how you wanted to show these class differences on display. And I guess we'll start out first with our two sci-fis. I guess there's three sci-fis, but I want to talk about well, no, two. For All Mankind and Silo, particularly the what do we call our little Mars colony and For All Mankind, where you kind of got the upstairs, downstairs going on.
It's called, well, first of all, I just want to say you guys are all such amazing designers. I can't even believe I'm in the company of you. The talent in front of me is
I think we
amazing.
all feel like that, yeah.
But Kat and Gavin, I mean, I've read your materials, I've looked at your shows, really incredible. So, and I'm not saying that, I really mean it. I mean, unbelievable work. I feel really honored to be with you. Given that, you're pointing out something, William, that I didn't even really pick up on, which is the stratification of society, the people's revolution that happens in my show, and the differences between the haves and the have-nots. We really play it hard on my show. And if you've seen the whole thing, because I don't want to be like a spoiler, but you really see it happen on my show. Like there's a full-on revolution. So given that up above on the surface level, the way we portrayed it is where the astronauts and the engineers, the people that are more entitled and maybe have a degree or something, they're on the surface, whereas the people that live underground are the ones that are the workers that have been brought up there to be like, as you would call it, the oil workers. They're the ones that are doing all the grunt work. And we really show that very graphically. It's dark down below. It feels like the bottom of a ship or a submarine. And up above, they have windows they can see on the surface, and there's light coming in.
Yeah, it's it's pretty striking, the disparity we've got going on there. And it's obviously it's not just there, because we also have, without getting too spoilery, I mean, we have other environments too. This is kind of the first time that we expand to the Soviet Union in your show as well. And so kind of a Soviet Union as it would still exist in 2003. So tell me a little bit about building that out, because it's very striking.
Sure. One of the really fun parts of this project is it's not only sci-fi, it's not only science-based sci-fi, with most of our references coming from NASA or Lockheed, Boeing sources, but also it's revisionist history, and it jumps every season, it jumps 8 or 10 years. So we're seeing technology change, we're seeing the president that Gore won the election, let's say in 2000. We're getting different versions of things. And of course, if you've seen the show, the Soviet Union lands on the moon first. So all of these things make for a really exciting, kind of trajectory and how the story is going to arc away. And we spent a lot of time in the Soviet Union, because in some ways the Soviet Union it's not so evil. And that's being portrayed in the show. We found architecture in Bulgaria that really, really represents sort of a constructivist, brutalist kind of look. It's extremist modern architecture. It looks like mid-century modern, it looks like early 60s, and it's a great look. So we went to this one location. It's an architecture school that was actually built by a Soviet architect in 1980. And that's where you get to see some really great looks. You're seeing a big, beautiful space with an incredible ceiling, with a really amazing graphic that we produced on the left side of frame. But the rest of this space is pretty well intact and probably hasn't changed in 50 years, or 40 years, I should say. So we're fortunate. The building outside, from the outside, I don't know if Gavin recognizes this, but it looks like James Sterling Lester Labs. And that's the thing that hit me. And I worked really hard to get this building, because, even though they really didn't tilt up any higher than this, as you keep going up, you see those pieces stick out, and they very modular looking.
Well, tell me about this mural, how you got that designed.
The mural is ambitious. It's trying to portray, on the one hand, the spirit of the glory of the Soviet Union, and is inspired, but it's not a copy of anything. And there's nothing you'll find out there that really looks like this. We made it up from scratch, and amazingly, that is all printed fabric. So they built a frame and they stretched that across, and I want to call it about, I don't know, maybe 22 feet or 24 feet wide. They built a whole frame and they stretched it seamlessly. It's got one horizontal seam in it, which you can't see. So
That's not stone, that is all fabric?
Yes, that is all fabric.
That's wild. How big is it?
As I remember, it's about 22 feet wide and probably about square. So it's 22 or 24 feet tall.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's huge. And it has sides on it too, which I don't have in this particular frame, but I do have somewhere. So when you see from the side, if we're up on the balcony looking in a reverse, seeing someone coming up the stairs at us, it's actually covered in all directions.
Well, that's very cool. Now we know the next thing that you can kind of put to decorate your background, right? You just get a space that's 3 times as big and throw that thing up there.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised.
So we're going to come back to some more of your locations, but I want to jump to our next class stratified environment. So Gavin, you know, it's funny he mentioned obviously some old Soviet architecture, because I was curious, building out the world of the silo. A lot of different inspirations there. It's not quite spaceship sci-fi. It's not quite brutalist. I read those books years ago and I was never quite sure how to visualize them. So tell me a little bit about kind of building this up from the ground up, which when you have no inspiration whatsoever. And I guess I wanna keep this touching on the class disparity, because I know it gets nicer as it goes up.
Yeah, I think Seth has stolen some of my thunder with the reference images there, which is fine. But obviously, from Hugh Howey's books and to Morton Tilden and Graham Yost, the showrunner, there was a lot of discussion earlier on about the overall concept of this mild deep silo, and our world is completely underground. There's nothing. Well, we eventually get on top, but the silo itself is a mild deep underground living space, and there were lots of explorations initially about what materials, obviously what shapes, how this could look. And we did steer towards that sort of East European socialist architecture. And it gave a sort of brutalist sort of feel and a rather nondescript. We were aiming for, you know, anything between 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, certainly with the decorating as well. And I think the nice thing about that architecture for us on one hand was that it was generally concrete architecture. So that gave us an awful lot of opportunity in terms of aging and finishes, which really helped when we were trying to designate the upper levels, the middle levels, and the lower levels, that, you know, subject to a lot of schedule and financial difficulties of how many sets you could build and which you could turn into other sets and which ones you could use again and revamp, that was the idea that the higher up in the silo, there was a slightly better finish, there was more colors, there was more, not new furniture, but better looking furniture. And as you move down through the silo, generally, as you'd understand, that the deeper you go down, it gets more damp, there's more water coming in from outside, from the earth. So everything as you get further down is more destroyed and more patinaed, and there's less color, and furniture is sort of recycled, so everything's a bit sort of put together. And I think everybody on this cast today will say that all these ideas sound as though we had these ideas on day one. Well, it's a process of months and weeks of establishing where we ended up. The blank piece of paper at the beginning is the most exciting and the most frightening piece of the job. And you work at it bit by bit. And obviously we're working very closely with Morton and Graham, and Hugh was very involved. And Hugh had never really visualized the silo. There was some fan art around. He always felt that everybody would see it differently. So he was very happy with whatever direction we wanted to go in. I know in the early concepts, as well as the concrete, we did introduce quite a bit of metal structure, like support structures, but it very, very quickly became very sci-fi. It became very spaceship looking. So I think Morton and Graham were really keen to keep this sort of apartment look, and it's sort of a medieval society in some senses. There's no books, everything's a verbal communication, and that's a way that the powers that be in the silo, in a sense, control the population. That the technology is incredibly low, but I think that idea of the different levels, the upper levels are much nicer, much cleaner. The lower levels are the grimy, dirty bottom of the sump oil of an engine. That's what it should feel like. And everything dirt-wise, garbage-wise, tends to get dropped over the sides, not intentionally, by mistake. So all that detritus ends up at the bottom. But I think we'll all agree that the idea of the concept of doing these things is a very different different thing to actually achieving it and making it work in the restrictions we always have with money and stage space and all those things. That sort of jigsaw puzzle is the biggest thing to put together, and you hope at the end of it, it looks like it was one very sort of coherent thought process right from the beginning, but it's never quite as straightforward as that.
Well, you mentioned obviously you have constrictions on space. How big was, I know you reused a set to be multiple levels, but there was like a central staircase, right? How big was that set that you built?
Yeah, I think there's always the conversation in these sort of shows, well, how much do we build and how much is visual effects? That sort of magical line, and there's no pure theory for every film. You want to try and shoot as much as you can in camera. In one sense, there's a bit of reality and tactility to having the set there. But the scale of this, a mile deep silo, you knew you weren't going to be able to build the whole of that. We were shooting, as we often do these days, in a converted warehouse, not a studio. So we were desperately looking for a stage for the main set that was going to be 45 feet high. There was lots of conversations about the different levels, how far apart they should be. But I know Morton, right from the beginning, felt he wanted 2 levels connected by the staircase. So you could walk from one level in one shot down the staircase to the next level. So that's what we did, really. The levels are about 30 feet apart, but we still only built 270 degrees of the circle. So the other 90 degrees was really a green screen world that you could change that for other floors that you probably just passed very quickly. So there's no way we were going to build those. And it was a challenge, trying to give a different look to different levels of the silo in color changes, dressing changes. And it's never exactly how you want it to be. But I think the visual effects department were brilliant, how they sort of put it together. And you never really felt, when you see the show, constricted. And even I was looking at it, I couldn't remember what we built and what we didn't build sometimes. Where is that line?
Well, in true Hollywood fashion, you should just claim it all. Now, it's remarkable work, though. It really is. I mean, the illusion is fantastic.
But that process has never changed since before digital, whatever, whether it's foreground miniatures, paintings, backings, they're all achieving the same thing. The digital world just maybe gives you a bit more freedom, but it's also not the cheapest solution sometimes as well. So.
Well, let's talk about 2 settings that were more in the real world. So I guess I want to hear about lessons in chemistry. It's funny you talk about, it was talking about class stratification. Some of this, I was surprised when I was reading some background to see that some of what I see in the show is actually existing, kind of the existing world in Pasadena, for example.
Yes.
So I would love to hear about building 1950s, 1960s world out of modern day Los Angeles.
Well, I mean, if you do something that's period, say the 1950s, you're really doing every decade before that as well, like layered on top of each other. And so you can find the 50s in Los Angeles even today, if you look in the right place. But in this case, Pasadena has some great old neighborhoods in which every house is the same period, like it's a craftsman house or it's a bungalow, and it's very close in decade and before 1950s. And they're still there. And those streets, for the most part, are kind of accurate period streets, which is fun. But the world that we were trying to create was Sugar Hill in Los Angeles, which is actually over kind of by USC. It's let's see, it has the same architecture in that it would be the same period of time that it was built. And in terms of class distinctions, it's really more about race than it is about class, because the people of Sugar Hill were, fairly wealthy people. And it was the race that ended up destroying that neighborhood. And we talk about that a little bit in the show. But I tried to make sure that all of the characters, because there's two groups of, the character of Elizabeth lives across the street from Harriet, but their houses are basically similar class houses. Harriet's a lawyer, her husband's a doctor. I didn't want to show that much disparity between the two of them. And then you're hit later on with the idea that a freeway is going to be built through the neighborhood. And the reason why the freeway gets built is sort of a lack of power versus a lack of money. And there's a moment where Harriet tries to get Calvin to come to a city meeting to argue for the neighborhood, and he ends up not coming because he I can't remember exactly why he couldn't come. It wasn't something so important, but it was devastating to Harriet because she needed that power to be at the meeting, and he wasn't there.
You mentioned the freeway, and I've been dying to know, tell me about the freeway. Where did you find kind of as your location for this? I assume you could not shut down large portions of a major operative freeway in Los Angeles. So where did you find that?
Well, okay, so Jesse Lorber was our location manager, and he was kind of amazing. There are freeways in LA you can shut down, but the problem with shutting down a freeway and making that our new freeway is just that, like a real freeway in LA, it's got fully grown trees, might have some graffiti. It has elements that are not period. So that's a problem. And also the neighborhood nearby, wherever, I mean, the freeways you're allowed to shut down are kind of in, like, I think the City of Commerce, the 7, I can't remember the name of the freeway. I don't travel it very much. But yeah, so he found this great kind of freeway overpass conglomeration near the airport, of all places, where the people who maintain the freeway kind of keep their equipment, and you can see the freeway above your head, basically. And there's also this sort of weird practice ramp of the freeway there, where people run drills and stuff, I guess. And so we decided to do it there, and we petitioned to get an off-ramp closed so we could do the off-ramp scene. And Jesse was like, there's no way they're going to say yes to this. Absolutely no way. And that's kind of how we went with it. We had this director who luckily really, really wanted to use that location. It was by far the most film, production value location versus like, there were some like places in other areas that you could pretend was a freeway. Still had some tree problems, but this was the best. And there were a few problems with like using the old equipment on asphalt because it was going to ruin the asphalt. So we had to keep all the old trucks like on the dirt versus the asphalt. And then at the last minute, they said yes to the off ramp. And so we got to use that. But in general, it's a real place in LA, and with some things that we brought in to hide bad views, it was all done without a lot of visual effects.
It's remarkable. Okay, another LA location, Nelson, as I understand it, the Hamptons mansion was actually shot down here. Would have never guessed. I've got to know about it. Tell me everything.
It's really interesting. One of the things that people think when you do contemporary is that it's not world building in the same way that maybe sci-fi is, and yet everything is totally created. There's no arbitrary choices. It's all having to either construct physically or through combinations of judicious use of locations, etc. And our show is, in a way, kind of wealth porn, but it's kind of a sublime contemporary that we're trying to really strengthen storylines, and for a third season to jump in and do almost entirely new environments. It's kind of a remarkable thing. We're doing New York in Los Angeles. The majority of the show, well, last season it was all over the world in Los Angeles during COVID. This year, it is so much in New York and Texas, and we only filmed in New York for 1 week, and during that week we're also filming in Los Angeles. So you're trying to like horse trade what are the most important things to do in your very limited time in actual New York City, and how do you create those environments and places. And so we had the Hamptons. We're on the beaches, if you can imagine. When we're walking the beaches, we're actually not in Montauk. We're way up at the Ventura County line and introducing sand grasses and the fencing and that sort of thing. And then trying to find a residence. One of the things that's exciting about this season particularly is you've hardly seen anyone's personal spaces in the previous seasons. And this year was all about seeing those things and really getting not only strata differences, socioeconomic differences between our characters, but also really geolocating them in different parts of the city or out in the Hamptons and Long Island. So trying to find those things. We really wanted Corey, Billy Crudup's character, to have a signature house, so that whether it really is something that reflects him or not, it would be something that he goes, I bought that one. And everyone would go, oh yeah, we know that house, a very signature house. And that's really challenging to find because there's not that many signature houses right on the beach. We have a lot of restrictions in California that are different kinds of construction than you have back east. So actually the house is in Pacific Palisades and we created the ocean around it. We created our views. We took off sections of the house. We modified, digitally removed sections. We added sections physically. We even redid the olive trees because there's no olive trees, in Montauk that survive. So they're all, deciduous, some of them digitally, some of them physical. But each of those things that they throw at us, I mean, it's remarkable what every designer on this call does to not only service when you do a feature, it's a one and done. You do those sets, you film them, and then you move on. But we don't often know what's in other scripts. And so you have to be able to come back and forth or gang work together and hope that you can get that location again. And there's often multiple directors. So in our case, John Hamm joins this season, and he was doing 2 other shows. So we only had him for little bits, and we were doing parts of 7 shows across a period of like August to December. And you are on every day trying to keep track of, you know, which house you're in, where you're doing, what director, what episode, you know, if someone's moving in during COVID in the storyline, and then you have to redress the house to how it looks today. And then the next episode has it back during COVID when they're moving in. It's, you know, everyone here is not only a logistician, but you know, they're a magician in how they're accomplishing work to make these stories flow visually.
Well, now I see why you're president of the ADG.
Mm.
You're like a walking hype man for everyone here.
Can I just add one little thing, William, right here?
Please do.
In television, we're very frequently asked to convert something or adapt something. We have a budget that is fixed, and we have to somehow succeed with what the script is asking us to do. And I know that all of you up here have had this issue. I was asked more than once to take a set and make it be 2 sets. So the Russian doll concept that I know Gavin Bocquet has referred to in his article in Perspective,
Yes.
that happens for all of us. You nest one item inside of another item, you pull the walls away, something else is exposed, and you've got all the dressing sitting right outside the door. Like, all of these things happen. The way Nelson is talking, you have to just be on the ball and like make it work somehow.
Yeah, we
I
have
think
about
I would just say the same thing. Even though Silo was mainly a constructed world, we still had that problem of episodes where you were returning with different directors, having to regenerate the sets you had before, and the first ideas you had, like pulling sets apart to reveal other sets, that's hard to do a second time. So hey, but it's all fun.
we do a regular trade out on the morning show. The UBA executive floors are also, you know, the 12th and 15th floor are actually the same set with different dressing, different graphics, different colorways, different furniture. The boardroom with different offices later is Alex's private office. And you can't know that when you're watching it, but from a production standpoint, you're having to make sure that all the show posters and everything match exactly which floor you're on and all the surround. So episodic has a mind bender that is so massively different than features, and everyone has to keep track of those things for continuity.
Yeah, is there a single person who's the scripty for kind of across the show, or are you also, because I know in film you have like a script supervisor who's managing continuity.
Well, there's script supervisors that that are on the show, but visual continuity is all of us here.
Yeah.
We actually have to make sure that you're racing through that before camera, that oops, that picture frame hasn't switched out, that chair is in the wrong position, oops, that wall didn't get in. You're having to manage, and you might be scouting with the next director for the next episode, and so you have to really rely on your team to be on top of it.
And lots of times you become like the set historian. You know, you're reminding people, oh, but don't you remember that person had that bedroom and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it's so much fun. It's like the best job in the world.
But I think none of us ever really know that it's worked until you see the final thing, because you don't know how all those things are going to come together and relate to each other. So it's always a bit nerve-wracking until you finally see the show, really. And also, does the audience react to it in the right way? It'd be lovely to have subtitles on the show saying, this was that set and this was that set, and weren't we clever? But you can't build it.
No, I don't want to know that. You're ruining my illusion here.
I don't want to know that either.
And
You did it and you don't want to know.
That's right.
But
we want people to know.
We were joking that Apple has these amazing, sci-fi things, and it started creeping into our show with space and John Hamm being a Jeff Bezos type guy for the opening. I'm going, wait, where are you taking the morning show? But John wasn't able to even be there for, just little packets of time. So we had to do the parts as fast as we could build them. His facility and all of that, and the launch platform was one time, and then months later we had the gantry that's built on stage, and the top of that, and they're walking into a non-existent space capsule, and then months later we're having to move scenery out of the way to be able to put the capsule in on a Lazy Susan. And so you're again working with logistics and timing of how fast you can get things manufactured, just so you can accomplish it. And none of us have all the stage space we want. So you're having to figure out, okay, when can you move this and what can be filmed here so that can be taken down and you can put something else in its place.
Kat, everyone else kind of told me something that they Russian dolled. Were there any sets and lessons in chemistry that I'm going to find out are like 5 different locations all in one?
Well, yes, of course. Because, people always think that you have a huge budget. I actually had someone say to me, this isn't Apple money. And I'm like, we didn't get Apple money either. But yes.
But we're grateful to Apple. They're very supportive, and we're grateful to Apple.
Yes. No, we love it. But like, for instance, Harriet's law offices were actually originally the offices of the head of Hastings. So that got switched over, and then there was a scene in the daughter Mad's elementary school that we switched into 1920s orphanage. So yeah, I mean, we have to. We don't have the money to like build everything fresh. Wouldn't that be great?
But what I think there should never be enough money in a funny sort of way, because you're always trying to do more than you have, be more impressive than the money you have. So
yes,
there would never be enough. We would always want whatever it was to look 10 times more than you had.
The worst mistakes you make are when you have too much time.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're
then you get
like, I can't believe I had one thing to do today and I screwed that up.
You definitely have to overbuild in our world. We build more scenery than we actually shoot. We try desperately to meet with everybody. There's a million meetings to try to get very efficient about everything that we have. But I think, for sure, all of you would agree. We build more than we need, as much as we try to be efficient. And I know, Gavin, you really talk about that a lot in your article. And that's the lesson of television is you're building madly, and then you want to know, why didn't we shoot that? So that's what happens.
I'm terrified I won't have time to ask you about some of my favorite environments. So I'm just gonna kind of I'm not rapid fire, but I want to ask you guys about a couple specific ones. Kat, the kitchen, this garish pink kitchen.
Yeah.
I want to know everything about that, because as I understand, Brie Larson actually had a lot of kind of back and forth with you about, no, it needs to be just garish.
Where did you hear that? That's a lie.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm kidding. She did. She was very smart about it. At the very beginning, I had a concept for the kitchen. And there was a moment where I had some time with her to show her what the designs for the sets were going to be. And the kitchen came up, and she's like, oh, yes, that's beautiful. I love it. But I would like a kitchen like that. And really, shouldn't this kitchen be something else? Something like not something that would be the producer's idea of the best female kitchen, the perfect kitchen for a woman. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, you want to do satire, but then you worry that it'll be too much. And so I had kind of stepped back from that a little bit in the kitchen. But then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna let it loose, and found this pink, which was popular at the time, pink kitchen, and then I added a little blue just to kind of make it a little less too much, and then really I drew a lot from kind of a Hollywood style that is a little bit exaggerated at the time. And so some of the wallpaper and molding, I really like overdid, like the scallops, and we enlarged the wallpaper. We got it from a wallpaper company that kept books from the 50s and printed the wallpaper for us. Originally it was blue, and I changed the colorway to pink, and then I made it a little bit bigger, and then on top of that I had bigger molding, and also keeping in mind that it's a set, and a lot of sets are built with moldings that are larger than they would be in real life, and that's so that the film, you can still see the detail on film that you might not see with an actual molding. So that's that kitchen basically in a nutshell.
My mom was obsessed with it, FYI.
Really?
So the kitchen stuck with people. Yeah, both repulsed and obsessed. So, you know, it.
Well, the thing about that color is that it was a black and white show, and I had been doing a lot of research on I Love Lucy, and I have a photo of John Wayne in Lucy's apartment, and that was the color of Lucy's apartment. Right. Because you know, in black and white, it makes a really nice gray tone.
Seth, instead of asking you some of my other locations, you look like you had like 15 screen photos of your sets with your finger on the trigger. So why don't you throw up another one of your favorites?
We all have our different processes for generating designs, and I was really blessed with an extraordinarily talented team right behind me. So I was able to take care of concepts and work on basic ideas and research and come up with the initial sketch. And at the end of the day, the thing that they made really worked. I mean, it looked incredible on screen, and you can see screen grabs, you can see illustrations, and you can also see even a graphic here where we studied all the graphics. So I just wanted you to see this piece because it's so beautiful, of and evocative of the process that we went through. Maybe very different than what Kat is doing. I was not at the level of the detail of the kitchen, which was exquisitely designed. But at the same time, I'm trying to work out how to live on Mars and how to function on Mars. So it was really, really, I can't describe to you what a pleasure it was. We're asked to design a spaceship. It may not look like Elon Musk's spaceship, but it might look like somebody else's spaceship. It's actually ours, completely ours. And we got to design it all the way down to the little teeny bits. And for Gavin and for Nelson and for Kat to get visual effects to actually do exactly what you've designed, I'm very, very fortunate again. That actually happened. They did exactly what we designed. And I couldn't believe it happened. In this particular case of the Mars rover, you can see on the upper left the item, and you can see our design for it. I convinced them to let us do this portion in visual effects so that we could build the interior, and the interior was a practical build. And that is how we were able to accomplish this set. I know all of you have done this before, where you allow visual effects to help you and to work with you and to support your design. The set itself is only 6 feet by 8 feet, so it was extremely inexpensive, but it allowed us to look out the windows where we used a visual effect. And I'm hoping this year we'll use Unreal Engine to develop the Mars exteriors.
Yeah, one of the things that we were really trying to do, it's interesting when scripts land on your desk and they have, oh, you're doing the Capitol insurrection, or you're doing, space, and oh, you have to have this done by this date. And we really were trying to stay away from being science fiction. So your research is a little different. You're actually going to what are the latest and greatest things that are extant that are starting to push the envelope now if you had all the money to do whatever this is. But also the fact that you're doing a rocket that's doing space travel, it's a little different than if you're doing scientific research. So we wanted to have different materials inside. You're actually sculpting things, you're creating an environment for weightlessness, and we're having to train the actors in a temporary environment while we're actually building the real thing. So there are elements of, a little bit of Virgin Galactic, a little bit of Origin Blue. There's things that are coming together, but yet again, wholesale hours. And I did something I've never used before, flocking, like you see on the inside of your glove box in your car, which is an electrostatic material onto surfaces. The entire inside of the capsule was geometric components that then were flocked, and they created an amazing look right next to the actors. The windows are larger, so you're seeing what they're seeing as a space tourist. But at the same time, you're seeing the Hyperion branding on everything. So it really feels like a real company. You're seeing that, embossed into the chairs and into all of their strappings. And it was really fun to find that happy medium between, what is possible without popping into the sci-fi end of things.
I feel like I've got to get back to Gavin because he's got something very sci-fi, and I want to hear a little more about this silo before we're out of time, though. It's kind of the alternative, the opposite end of the spectrum from the very realistic and based in reality. The silo self-sustaining. I know Hugh Howey had kind of thought a little bit about how the infrastructure would even work, the ecosystem, but there's a lot going on here. We have like stalks of corn growing within this interior. So tell me about some of building out this environment of the silo in a way that shows the audience that this isolated concrete cylinder could literally sustain life with food, air production, everything like that.
Yeah, I think just before we start there, what I think Seth is saying to the other guys is that there's such a lot of good people that are in your department that really support you throughout this whole process. It's such a collaborative world. And I think if there are any, as you said earlier, students going to be looking at this to see what this job is, that is such a valuable part. And even the young guys and gals coming in, they always have great creative ideas that you can use. What we can bring to it with our experience, we know how to make use of those ideas. Whereas when you're a bit younger, you have the ideas, but you're not quite sure how to put them in. So I just want to say we all rely on that great group of people that we have around us on there. But I think in the silo, in one series, we couldn't explore everything that explained how the silo worked. We did concepts that went way past what you saw on the show, whether it's fish farms, whether it was the electrical, how that was produced, whether it was the engineering side. Because if they're not in the script, if they're not in the story, they're not going to be called for. So occasionally when you see the wide shots of the silo in visual effects, they did incorporate some of these other level ideas that we had. But hopefully moving forward in the future series, you'll see a little bit more of that. But it is a world, it's 10,000 people living on their own, and they have to produce everything, whatever it is. But there's an awful lot of recycling. The food is obviously something that has to be done that can be grown. There's virtually no wood. It's all about the best produce you can grow. So I think a lot of these things, you try and get to the bottom of the reality of producing that world, but you're also in the world of make-believe. You know, it has to work for the story, it has to work for the scene. So sometimes you can't analyze everything down to the final degree of what is sensible. But as long as you give the audience the idea that this could work, which it probably could, I think that's all we were looking to do.
Is it still supposed to take, I have read these books 10 years ago. Does the silo still exist in what used to be Atlanta? And if so, how are the minerals down there? Did Hugh address this? This has driven me crazy for 10 years.
No, I mean, I don't know what the other guys are like, but if I ever work on a show that's got previous material, I tend to avoid reading it. I tend to find that the script is where I want to be, and otherwise you get a bit confused with, was that in the script? So I don't know where the other books go. It's sort of, I know what I did on season 1, but whatever happens after that, I have no idea. I mean, we're doing something else. I'm not doing season 2, so I'll look at it as excited as anybody else will. But they do get out of the silo, you know. So
I'm gonna avoid talking about that environment a little bit, you know, just because I don't want to spoil the show too much for people.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I always read the source material.
Oh, it's interesting. I tend to avoid it.
Because I'm just curious, and sometimes there are little hints in there that may not have been explored in the script, even though, I mean, the script is obviously the first thing you go to. Am I
the only one that doesn't read the source material?
Well, fans might be looking for that red chair or that one thing. If there's a little extra that you can throw into it and make your own, it's satisfying for them.
Yeah.
Because I've done
it's worked so far. So I'll stay not reading source material.
Okay, well, what about you, Seth? Do you read the source material?
I hate to say it, Gavin, but I always read the source material. I'm a big researcher. I want to know everything about everything. That's my problem.
I'm sorry, Gavin.
I think there is an argument for both, but I'll
I think that's true.
Maybe I will next time. I will try next time.
Well, no, but in your case also, you mentioned that he would never visualize what the silo was. And so you don't, you know, it's, in this case, I think it is fair game. You're the first person to really.
Well, he said everybody, I'd say one little nice anecdote, which we've all got probably, when we just started to build the staircase and had something physical to walk up, Hugh came and he was there walking up, and he got very quiet when he was about sort of 30 feet above me. And I went up and he was actually in tears. He was just saying, you know, it's taken 14 years. I think the show was with another company, with Ridley Scott's company, before it came to Apple. So I think it can take such a long time for these guys who write these brilliant novels to get things made. It's just, and it was just really emotional for him. Of course, you worry, first of all, when you see that he's trying for the wrong reason.
But what's amazing is this group of people, and by extension, even people beyond, not on this call, that are doing production design, are amassing amazing teams and doing really, really detailed visual storytelling. It's a visual narrative. It's not just architecture. We're doing things that may not be able to survive engineering in the real world, but we're doing things that support the story and make it stronger, whether it's with graphics or with plants or with furniture or fabrics. Each of us is choosing and making decisions to make our particular narrative stronger and fill in the gaps, because a script pretty much is an outline, and each of us as production designers have to flesh that out and make it even more than what it is, so it's believable.
And without getting too emotional, just when you become a production designer, you very rarely meet other production designers.
Yeah.
We're sort of in different places, and yet I think we all seem to, whenever I do, everybody seems to have the same mentality, the same sense of humor, the same way of thinking about things. Whatever country you go to, you have, and I suppose that could be the same for any profession, that they're sort of like-minded people. So it's very nice to see you, and I think I've met one or two of you before, but it's very nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you too. I just want to add one little thing on top of what Nelson said. I'm sure all of you have been in the situation where you actually bring the actor into your set. I know Kat mentioned it, and you introduce them to the pieces that you've designed for them. Maybe they're props, maybe there are other details. Often there's a newspaper, there's things for them to do. The drawers have materials in them. We really try to bring it to life for the actor, and that really is our job.
No arbitrary, there's nothing arbitrary. They're all choices that each person has made and brought to the story visually.
I was going to ask a few more questions, but this seems like such a good note to end on, honestly. All I know is that you guys need to get back together and teach some kind of I don't know, extension course or master class on production design, because I could hear you guys.
I don't know what experience the other guys have, but I've done a few lectures. You do that as part of the time, and a lot of the times people want you to theorize about why you did certain things, and sometimes the only answer you've got was, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. So sometimes it's on instinct. What you're doing is a very quick decision. You can't think about everything for 6 months. So there's a bit of both going in there, isn't there? There's long-term and incredibly short-term decisions to be made.
We had to actually build some things to make Los Angeles be New York. And then when we're in parts of New York, we needed those particular elements, and they weren't in that part of New York. So we shipped parts of New York that we built in Los Angeles to New York to film in New York to make it more New York. So that's how
it's very meta.
Yes, that's how crazy this all can be.
Before we go, is there anything that you wanted specifically to touch on the projects you guys are nominated for? I'll kind of go one by one. Nelson, you got anything else for me?
Bradley's huge loft, which is built entirely on stage. Everyone thinks it's in Tribeca.
What?
And yes, it's a set.
And
oh
my God.
We actually built the backdrop to be the Tribeca view, because there was so much visual effects in the show. We were trying to cut the money so that we'd have one large set that didn't have visual effects. And so, yeah, that's on stage 30, actually next door to Jen's penthouse, to Alex's penthouse, is Bradley's loft. And it has, all sorts of, design elements. The railings are, from Grand Central Station, elements like that. And if you look really closely, you'll see a poster on the wall that we found from the actual documentary about the protest that Bradley did in season 1 at the mines. Wow. And we, the decorator found that actual poster, and we got the rights to put it in. So there's all sorts of, levels of that. But yeah, that's an entire set.
Oh my God. I almost didn't even ask about that one because I assumed it was just excellent location scouting. That is remarkable. Okay, Seth, what about you?
I think I'm going to just go big picture and just say to you that this is the funnest job in the world. And I constantly am pinching myself that I'm being put in this incredible situation to create what I love. I love sci-fi. So I love being able to create a world and to walk through it and to exist in this place for a second. It's like a childhood dream. I mean, when I was a little kid, of course, I was watching Star Trek, and I've just grown up with this. So I'm always just ever grateful to be able to play in this giant sandbox every day.
Okay.
No, I think, and also apart from the actual work we do, the design work we do, it's about the people you meet, the experiences you have, where you travel to anywhere in the world. And, a film production has everybody from the top executive, highest paid film stars to the guy who sweeps the stages. and you are immersed in that whole mix of people in different countries, and that's such a irrelevant to the film in a sense. That's just a brilliant life experience if you enjoy that type of thing. And I think when I worked on my first film, you think the success of the show is going to be what makes you happy, but actually you can never guarantee a show is going to be successful. So the most part is just the experiences you can look back on and the fun you have meeting people and all the things you do. So it's a great business. It has, so that's like Seth, I'll say the same thing.
And then Kat?
Well, I actually would love to show the clip.
Please do.
Hey ladies, I'm sorry the audience is full for today. Please come back tomorrow.
Baking dish?
The left holds more heat.
Live in 2, I need you in the chair.
Did you get the sodium chloride I requested?
Of course.
Roma or San Marzano?
Roma, thank you, James.
You never answered my question about the Presto sponsorship, and I know how you feel about
I will start the
sponsors.
show with it, Walter.
Really? You're not just saying that? Oh, good Lord. Thank you. Cans are on the counter. Don't forget to smile from time to time. Have a great show. Bye. What kind of salt did you eat? Uniodized. I went with kosher. It's all gotta be perfect. Labels out. It's all in the cue cards.
Oh, don't worry, Walter.
Got it.
Welcome, ladies. The show's about to start. Big smiles, energy, happy. Energy, big smiles. How are you? And rolling. We're live in 5, 4, 3.
Welcome, viewers. My name is Elizabeth Zott, and this is Supper at 6.
That is actually meaningful to me because my grandfather was a key grip on early television. So he worked on Ozzie and Harriet, he worked on The Lucy Show, and then retired, unfortunately, before I started. And so this is sort of a little kind of Easter egg for him.
I cannot imagine the difficulty of having to be in charge of pulling focus or lighting on that tracking shot. That is insane. It is a remarkable shot, and we obviously talked about the kitchen, but was this genuinely an unbroken take, and you had to have this whole set ready to move through there?
Well, of course, there is a break between the exterior and the interior because the interior is on our stage and the exterior is in Glendale. So, but the only visual effect in that shot is Hollywood at the top where, they pan down, and then the rest of it is real.
That's astounding. Was that, so building out that area in your set, and this is honestly, this could lead into a conversation we probably don't have time for, but building it out to be spacious enough to have this freedom for pretty extensive camera movement like that, I imagine that was difficult without making it cavernous because it needs to kind of be almost.
Well, it's very funny because the director was absolutely insane. I mean, in a great way. Sarah Dina Smith, she just kept pushing and pushing, more hallway. And I'm like, but we can't afford more hallway. And so like some of the hallway at the beginning is not the greatest hallway, I'll tell you. It's like vinyl floors and painted walls. And then you get to part of it, which is much better hallway. And then, I'm glad she pushed it because it's such a beautiful shot that I'm like, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this is why you work. This is why you work hard.
The a beautiful moment, and I do love all the little the cans and stuff. I don't think we have time to quite go into the props, but I did notice that your collaboration with the property team on all of these
Oh
were
my God, they are brilliant.
remarkable. I heard that you had to trawl through eBay to find a lot of the stuff to
Oh my God, and luckily you still can. The biggest problem is sourcing 50s laboratory equipment and then trying to get people on set not to try to use it. That was the worst part. Like they plugged in the God, what is that thing called where the blood spins?
Centrifuge.
Oh, a centrifuge?
Yes, they plugged in an old eBay centrifuge that isn't supposed to work. And I'm like, what are you doing? You could get hurt with this material.
Yeah, that's how they burn down your set.
Exactly. It's like they always need a level of improvisation that's so hard for a period show because you have to have it in order for you to improvise. You can't improvise with everything on the set, unfortunately.
Well, before we go, Gavin, I feel like we got just kind of a high level philosophical view, but are there any other specific thoughts on the show? Maybe you could give me some of the props since we just had Kat talk about that.
Well, I think we had the same thing. Amanda Bernstein was set decorator, and when you're doing a show that we ended up shooting with for maybe 11 months, that you have to purchase most of that. You can't rent it from the prop hire because it's just too expensive. So she did a brilliant job in terms of going to every market, every secondhand market, going on eBay. And basically you produce your own prop room, you produce your own, and obviously moving forward into season 2 as well, I'm sure they're using exactly the same pieces. And when you go back 10, 20 years, that didn't exist. So that is a whole other world, which really helps the decorator to find those things that are out there. And, we were working, although we were, sci-fi, we were still working in a 50s, 60s, 40s, 70s. So all the stuff is out there and you're just trying to get hold of it. And the whole world of the silo was a recycling world. So we were recycling the things that we found on eBay into other things. So we were almost living in the same way, or Amanda was and her team living in the same way that the population of the silo was living, just by default. So I think we really enjoyed the show. It was 18 months of playing with toys, really. So, what could you say? It's like, I'm just going to jump in there. I saw in when you were sharing your screen, Seth, on one of your tabs, I saw Sean Hargreaves' name.
Yes, Sean is a very, very talented concept artist. He's coming back to us again. You can't have.
Well, do say hello. We worked together on 2 or 3 things in the 90s. So please say, so please say, that's why I recognize, please say hello.
I will. Okay.
It's a funny business. You work with people, you don't see them for 10, 15 years. And when you meet them, it's like you saw them yesterday.
Seth and I have had the joy of collaborating together on a television series and a feature in the past. So we've known each other for years, and Kat through the Guild, and I'm so happy to meet you, Gavin. It's the people are what make this so wonderful, the teams and getting to work with such talent. It's really exciting.
I think I feel my nomination is a long service medal.
Yeah, it is long overdue in your case. So I'm so happy for all of you. I'm happy you're nominated. Seth, you should have been nominated back in 2001 for Rat Race for the Barbie Museum. Don't think I didn't remember that, especially when the Barbie movie came out.
That's so funny. Now I have to see
that.
You guys remember that joke, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Barbie is for Klaus. It turns out to be Klaus Barbie, the Nazi, instead of being like an actual Barbie museum. Yeah, that was your handiwork, right?
Well, we actually had the Mercedes, like a Hitler Mercedes in there. We had a whole bunch of crazy stuff.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been fantastic. And I wish you all the best of luck this year. You're mostly in different categories, like hopefully.
Yeah, so good luck, everybody.
As usually happens with these events, and thankfully I got a free month subscription on Apple TV, but I now have to watch Silo for All Mankind, the morning show, because Stuff like this just kind of makes you want to dig deeper into the work. And this event was no exception. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the event, and we have many more to come. We're going to thank our sponsors again, AJA, American Cinema Editors, Avid, and Filmmaker U, and of course, Jason Banky and Janet Dalton, who, they turned this into great stuff. And after 31 episodes, it's hard to believe that we've been really putting out this kind of stuff for this long. So keep tuning in and let us know what kind of stuff you want to see in the future. This is Josh from Manhattan Edit Workshop signing off. Have a good night.